Welcome to the Rep Matters Breakfast Club, a monthly meetup for Black startup founders and their allies. On this episode, we have a very special guest joining us for the second time, Frank Baylis. Frank has decided to do a second tour in politics and run for Liberal Party leadership, which would make him our next Canadian Prime Minister. Join us as we talk about his ultra-successful entrepreneurial journey, his transition to politics, his vision for the country, and the impending tariff war with the US.
So for those of you who don't know, Frank is an amazing story. His mother built a company and he scaled it. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, my mother went from 0 to 1, which is, it's really hard. And we made it taking it from 1 to 100, but the 0 to 1 is critical too.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I want to thank you all for coming, for taking your time this morning and being here. And wanted to sort of dive deeper on certain topics that we've already touched on. We'll touch on some of them because a lot of you hadn't seen that or hadn't been there. But let's start with the entrepreneurial journey. I was talking to my man and he said that he was actually was an intern.
So my first office job was at Baylis Medical.
And we're here in Montreal?
The Montreal office, it was mostly like data entry with the ERP Epicor.
Oh, well, wow, that's going back, yeah.
And that made me
welcome.
think, like how many other people either got to start at Baylis and the job creation aspect and things of that nature. Tell us about how it was to scale from 1 to 100.
Yeah, so like I tell people, a lot of people hear Baylis Medical, they make the assumption that I started the company. I did not, my mother did. And I underline that fact for women entrepreneurs because I don't want to take away anything from her. And so my mother was an operating room nurse. She was a nurse, but she also had this visionary that what we call minimally invasive surgeries now. So before, used to be like in the 40s, you didn't touch the heart. And then they said, okay, wait a minute, don't touch the heart. If you touch the heart, you kill the person. And then they started doing little things on the heart, fixing the heart, little operations. Then they got better at it. Then they got to the point where they take your heart out, they call it heart bypass, take your heart out, work on it, put it back in. Then they got heart-lung bypass. They could cut you open, take everything out, clean it all up, put it back in. But when they did that, you had your ribs were cut, cracked open scar, you're in the hospital for 6 months. And then what happened is they started thinking, we can do all this, what if we don't? So you probably heard about balloon angioplasty or blocked arteries. Has anybody heard that? Yeah, so before we used to do bypass, so think of a highway that's all blocked up and they put a bypassed highway. So they'd stitch onto your heart an extra tube. Now what they do is they just go in, imagine they make a little cut here, they use your blood vessels as highways, go into the heart, open up the blockage, and then come out, and then you get a little bandage. Compare that to an open heart surgery, where you're cut open, you have a scar from here to here, your ribs are broken. So being an operating room nurse, she saw this wave coming, this minimally invasive wave, and that's what she started doing. And the first thing she did was for brain aneurysms. So anywhere else in your body, if you want to work on something, you can cut it open, push stuff out of the way, and get to work on it. You can't do that in the brain. You can't go in the brain and start pushing stuff out of the way because it's like, that's your brain. So this was one of the first places where if you had what they call aneurysm, which is a blood vessel that's bleeding, they would say,
Sorry.
put your affairs in order.
Yeah.
Put your affairs in order. And then one of these people developed in France a way to do a catheter, go up there and basically inject the crazy glue. Kind of like cork up the hole and come out. And she brought that technology to Canada. There was a doctor that moved from France, because that's where it was invented, to Quebec. They needed someone to buy this catheter, get it approved in Canada and sell it to him. And that's how she started the business.
Amazing.
Yeah.
At what point did you jump on board?
So, you have to know my mother. I'm trained as an engineer, and I also had this entrepreneurial bug. So I graduated in 1986, and I tooled around Europe for a while, and I came back in 87. I said to my mom, let's she was just working out of the house. I said, let me join you and we'll make a go of this business. And my mom says, no. She says, you don't know anything. She said, you have to go get a job for 2 years, then come and see me. So I went and worked at a medical company in Toronto because I knew that I wanted to get back in. And they treated me very well. I had, within 2 years, I had like 7 people working for me. I had a company car in my office, and I would stand at the window like this, and I felt I was in jail. I just had that entrepreneurial bug. I wanted to get up. So 2 years came. Thank you, Mr. Lavery. I left, came and joined my mom, and I left all that to get no money because it was just very embryonic and starting off. But that is something that if it calls to you, you should do it. So that called to me, and I left. And a lot of people say, well, I got a great job. It was pretty well set up, right? No, let it all go. And I had no question about it because I was going where I wanted to go, you know. But then joining my mom was very small, so I couldn't pay myself. I had to use my savings and that, but that was the start of it.
How do you explain the trajectory from, you know, how that started to where things are today? You've had 4 or 5 exits. You sold the business 4 or 5 times, like pieces of the business.
Yeah.
And really scaled out. Like when you reflect on that journey,
So yeah. So what my mom had started was just importing and reselling. They're importing and reselling, and she then imported a couple products from Europe and resold them. And there was no doctors that were trained to do this. They were basically radiologists that did the radiologists when they take the images and said, okay, man, you got this bleed in your head. And there was a few of them that said, look, we're going to try and do something. We're going to try and address this. And but they were not trained to do it. So they were called Mavericks or whatever. And I remember, this is a true story, there was like by then 5 or 6 of them in all of the Americas, like think from North America, South America, and it started right here in Quebec. And I went to see a guy in Toronto, nice guy, and he says, Frank, I'm done. I said, what happened? So he went to inject the glue, but he left the catheter in too long before he pulled it out. He glued the catheter into the guy's brain. And he got to sleep at night, right? He goes, I can't sleep at night. There's a doctor here in French guy, one of the pioneers, and I remember this, he'd do the case, and you know, like you see in the movies, there's the operating room, and then you come out, and there's a little sitting room here. He'd come out of the case, open the drawer up, take out his cigarettes, start smoking, and there was a big no smoking sign. People had put it right there in the bench, like right in the hospital, because it was so nerve-wracking. So it was like that, but it's now what they call a subspecialty. So all the universities have people to train you how to do it. It's a huge business. But at the time, it was just starting.
And Wild West of medicine.
Absolutely. And my mom was having problems with these guys in France. They were very difficult to deal with. She said to me, by then my friend Chris Shaw, another engineer I went to school with, we joined her. So there's 3 of us. And she says, you guys are 2 engineers, you know, go on, develop this thing, and we'll get rid of these guys. And so I went to see one of the doctors, and he says, Frank, you know, this is peanut business. There's 5 of us in all the Americas doing it. So I went to my mom, and I said, no, we're not going to do this. I told her it's a peanut business. Well, some lessons here, because there was a company in Silicon Valley that decided to get in on the business, and they started developing one, and lo and behold, within about 6 years or 7 years, they sold for 1.2 billion US back then. So I learned a couple lessons, and I tell everybody, listen to your mom, okay? I don't know if there's any moms in here, but listen to your mom, number 1. But also, look at the future. You know, so small business, there's nothing here, but my mom's vision of where things were gonna go, and if you think about it, it made a lot of sense, and that's happening throughout medicine. So after that, I learned another lesson. I said, okay, at some point, we're gonna start to develop our own products. And then we did start to develop our own products. And because of the way we started, we were unique in that we started importing and reselling. And then basically, if I'm selling this, I buy it and I sell it. So I don't have or might have 5 in inventory, but it's not very cash heavy, right? So I could buy and sell. And we use that to auto finance ourselves. So we were very unique in the sense that we had no investors. In fact, when I started, there was no venture capital in Canada. didn't exist. It only existed in Silicon Valley when we started about 40 years ago. So if you wanted a deal, you couldn't even go to Boston. You had to go to Silicon Valley, and they had so many deals that says, we're not even flying out to see you. You come here, pitch us, and we'll tell you. So that's where it really started, this whole concept of venture capital. Then it spread to Minneapolis, Boston. There's all these centers. Then it came to Canada. But at the time, there was not that much going on. So we had this, Quebec government tried to do a very small fund, venture capital fund, and we got a very small investment to do one project, and I found dealing with it so painful. I said, oh man, I'm gonna avoid.
Don't want to deal with me either.
No, but like I just found dealing, like, especially because they were government based and they wanted us to make decisions that were not right for business, but they said, oh, it's better, can you buy this product from a Quebec manufacturer, this piece here, don't buy it from the better manufacturer there, right? So I saw that it was contorting us like that. And then the other thing that woke me up is there was a friend of mine, this would have been my age, I would call him an old guy, who would be my age then, and he was building the first telemetry systems, which is like hospitals. You used to go there and you'd be all wired up and you couldn't walk anywhere because you're wired up. Now they put all these things on you and it's just like wireless, so you could walk around. He was developing this, and he was a guy that I'd go see up near Notre Dame Hospital. He was always super jazzed. And then one day he got $20 million investment. It was big money back then. And then I saw him the next time. Life had gone out of him. He said, he goes, I'm just an employee now, Frank. And I went, oh. It was like he was punched in the gut. And I said, okay, I hear you. So as we got bigger, and a lot of venture capitalists don't like it when I tell this story, they would start to call, and as we got more and more successful, hey, Frank, you need an investment. And I never said no, because if you got in trouble, you don't want to say, hey, I need money. So I said, not right now, things are going good, but we got this growth plan. He goes, can I call you 9? I said, call us in 9 months if we need it. So I was always kicking the ball down, but I never said no. But because if I ever did need the investment.
That's important relationship-wise, but also leverage-wise. You
Yeah.
don't want to come back and be like, oh, I need money all of a sudden. You want to be like, oh, we talked about the growth plan and now it's ready.
Yeah, so exactly.
Give you some investment.
Yeah, because I don't want to come and go, I'm in big trouble. They go, yeah, now we're going to get you. No. So I would say I would kind of kick the ball down the field, but I made a conscious decision not to take money. And then what happened is our business grew to a certain size. And then at one point my mother wanted to retire or pull out, but it's like, I don't have the money that this thing is worth. So that was when we sold our first business line. We sold it to a company called Kimberly-Clark, you'd know that. They had a healthcare division, and they were representing us in the States. And what happened was we were still small, so we developed really interesting technology, but we didn't have money to build a sales force. So they said, we'll sell for you in the States, but if it goes well, we're gonna knock on your door and you gotta sell the business to us. So that day came, and it was tough because I told people we were going down the highway like 100 miles an hour, and suddenly the engine's gone. I sold the engine. And then we had to build a new engine before we crashed. But I sold the engine, and by doing that, it allowed me to then take money to give my mom to pay her out of her shares, and then to take what they call money off the table. Because back then, your house is mortgaged, the banks, they got you under the gun, right? And I said, okay, now, show me all of those deals. We're ripping them all up.
Yeah,
and that.
paying everything off.
So and then we did that, so we had money in the bank, and that really helped us. We probably sold it too cheap, but it was that opportunity for us to then catch our breath, give my mom, buy her out, so then it was just me and my partner left. And that led us to then learning a lot of lessons. So one of the things I tell people, and I really do believe this, is that our success, a lot of it, my partner and I, and even my mom, we didn't spend a lot of time when we made a mistake trying to point to blame people. I see this all the time. We just say, okay, we messed up here. What did we learn? Don't do that again. But too many businesses, I see people going, well, my partner did this, or this customer really screwed us, or they're always looking for an excuse, and it's a waste of time. So I always tell, just learn what you did wrong, or learn something from it. So what we learned with Kimberly-Clark is we had this deal, and it was really good for us because they had to buy a minimum no matter what. And it's a big company, Kimberly-Clark, so we knew every year they have to buy this much product. But the formula to buy us out was tied to the sales. So every year they made the quota, but they probably could have doubled their sales. But if they doubled their sales, guess what happens when they got to buy it? So we learned the lesson there that we don't want to be under anybody's thumb anymore. So next time we're building our own sales force in the United States. We're not relying on any distributors in that. And we had people come to us. I could say it amongst friends here or whatever. I can't say, I don't want to get sued, but like say big companies like Johnson & Johnson, they tried to muscle us. And they said, okay, look, you guys got great technology. You're going to license it to us or we're going to copy you and crush you. I said, okay, you know what I mean? And license, you get like 3%.
Yeah.
And we're not licensing at all. I said, you guys catch me if you can. But we learned those lessons of how to deal with it. So that was a big lesson for us. So when we sold our business, the cardiology business that we built, we had our own sales force. We had everything. And when we went to sell it, we were like well sought after, but we didn't need to do the sale.
You weren't in a position where you had to sell it.
We didn't have to sell it. The timing was right. We always did what was right for the business. We were never building it just to sell it. It just that it made sense at this time, this business should be sold. So we did 5 exits. The first one was Kimberly-Clark. The second one we sold to Ernst & Young, and it was a consulting business. And what had happened there is there was research and development tax credits, so we were the first people to do this. And then we'd tell a friend, hey, you should be doing this. Now, how to do it? Okay, we'll help you. And we had that kind of grew out of there. And there was also a very strong family friend, my Uncle George, who wasn't a blood relative, but my Uncle George was the one that introduced, it was his cousin that had invented the catheter, the brain catheter in France, and he was friends with my mom and introduced it.
Wow.
And then he also said to us, hey, you know what, this whole SRD thing is going, you guys should get in on that. And he was one of the auditors for SRD. So he kind of introduced Chris and I to that program. And then we started doing R&D tax credits for ourselves. Then we were helping friends, and then a business grew out of that. And we had offices in Montreal, Toronto, and Calgary. And all the big firms wanted, so Ernst & Young, Deloitte, they're all trying to buy it all the time. And we always wanted to have 2 stools, so we had this consulting business and we had the medical in case something went wrong. But then when we sold to Kimberly-Clark the first line, then we didn't really need this other, stool, this consulting business. And so I was down in Toronto, and Chris, there's always like another guy calling us, do you want to sell? And he hands me the guy's card, and it's like, this is the head of the whole Ernst & Young Canada. Yeah, he really wants to have lunch, and I'm all right,
fine, I'll take the meeting.
So we went, and I said, you know what? We don't need it anymore. We can just focus now on cardiology because once we sold that one business, we were sought after this other one. We said, okay, we're going to sell this business too. So that's what led us to sell this consulting business. And I'm very proud to say, like, the first business we sold to Kimberly-Clark, they had this idea of being like Johnson & Johnson, but then they divested it. And it's called Avanos now. And that same line that we developed is still their #1 seller.
Wow.
And now Ernst & Young, the people we sold that business to, I can't tell you how many that work there are now partners in Ernst & Young. Doing really well. And not only that, but most of the SRD claims in Canada are done the way we set them up, structured, because we kind of laid the line. And that, yeah. And then, yeah, sorry.
So let's shift gears to politics. Why?
So that's politics, like anything, is a calling. You either feel that you want to do this or not, right? And for me, it's a way to contribute back. I really feel that. If our whole society runs up people contribute to society. There was a lady called Hazel McCallum, I don't know if you know her. She's the long-term mayor of Mississauga. She was like 90. I don't know, I think 93 and still mayor, and sharp, going strong. And we had invited her, because our offices are in Mississauga, we had invited her one time to give a talk to our annual general meeting. And she's 90-something, she drives herself there, gets up, gives her a great talk, sits down, eats breakfast, and says, I got to get to work. 90-something, a real inspiration. But she said something I never forgot. She said, look, all of our community runs on volunteers. We can't pay all the soccer coaches. We can't pay the hockey coaches. We can't pay the people that work at food banks. We can't, all this stuff we can't pay. Now we do have this, so her answer was, you all have to contribute to society. And everybody that I've met that's contributing is happier, healthier, younger. That's one of the things I worship politics, is that because I was there from 215 to 219. And the people that were volunteering and helping, they were 10, 15 years younger. They were healthy and happy. And the people that were always miserable, the government didn't do this for me, the government didn't do that for me, and no matter what, and just miserable people, sick and unhappy. But the ones that were helping, I learned that lesson. I went to one time in the basement of a church, which is where you have all the meetings, and they're doing the bingo for the old people, right? The guy running it's got to be 85, and he's, hey, Frank, I'm just here to help out the old people, what? But for him, in his mind, he wasn't one of them.
He was
coming down, setting up all, bringing the old ladies in, playing the bingo, and then packing them all up and giving them a coffee and that. But he was helping out, and I love that guy. And so for me, what I see going on, it's not acceptable. It's not right. And I can change it. I can fix it. And I feel like I have a duty. This is a great country we live in. It's a wonderful world. We have challenges in our world, but we need to step up. And I'm hoping to have an honest conversation with Canadians and say, look, this is what's going on. They're wasting our time. They're wasting money. They're arguing silliness and that. And we need to get down to getting our economy going strong. We need to get our healthcare working for everybody. I have these visions. I see how to do it. I just want to go do it. So I want to modernize government. I want to fix the healthcare. I tell everybody I want to have the best healthcare system in the world. People go, I don't know. Yes, we can do it. I see the vision. I know how to do it. And I want to get the government running smoothly. So imagine you have a question for a revenue candidate and you can go online, book a time, and get a Zoom call. I know it sounds, are you crazy? Yeah, it's actually, yeah, we could do it. I know.
You don't have to wait on hold for 2 hours?
No, imagine that you don't go to, if you gotta see a physician, you have a doctor, you don't go to emergency rooms, stick there for 8 hours. All this is fixable. And I'm a fixer, I'm a doer like that. I'm an entrepreneur and I'm an engineer. So I see that and I just want to get the economy going. So I want to make these fundamental changes. And it's a democracy, so I'm going to have this conversation with Canadians, and if they say, look, we're not interested, that's fine. But I feel compelled to do this. I feel compelled to contribute and do my bit. And I don't call it volunteer because you are paid, but it's my contribution. And I think that if you're doing that and you're contributing to your society in whatever way is right for you, you're more fulfilled than that. And worst case is I say, this is who I am, this is what I want to do, and people say, we're not interested. That's fair. That's democracy. But I want to have this conversation with Canadians. Tell them, this is what we can do. This is what we can ascribe to.
Yeah. What has been the reaction from the Liberal Party to your candidacy?
So what happens with all politics, it's what we call in Ottawa, it's called the Ottawa bubble. So everybody there, that they live in the bubble, they work in the bubble, the media is there. And so for them, they don't really see me. I'm not crying about it or not, but I'm not like, who's this guy? I do these kind of talks across the country, trying to encourage new entrepreneurs, help them out. I'm well known in the business community. I do a lot of work with social justice. But for them, they're blind for that because they don't live in Ottawa and I haven't made my name being a politician or a bureaucrat like that. But again, in life, I don't see any point crying about it, you know what I mean? So that's just an extra challenge I have to meet. And so now I've got 5 weeks to try and get my name out there and get people to know who I am and what I'm trying to bring to the country.
And the climate down south isn't helping. And we know that, the opposition will call an election right away, essentially. If, this is going to sound weird, but if you don't win, do you still think the Liberals have a chance, whoever is leading the party?
I think that when I look at it, first of all, I got along with 80% of politicians there. Liberal, conservative, NDP. So I'm not a super partisan guy. There are people that they're like, those guys are the devil, or if we get stuck on something, I go talk to conservatives, and they're like, oh, you can't talk to them, they're insane. And I go, take it easy, So there's hyper partisanship and it's useless. It doesn't help at all. So I would say that, there's this mindset, if we don't win, it's the end of the world. Now, having said that, this particular leader for the Conservatives is a hyper partisan guy. They're not all like that, but I don't think he's going to be good for the country. And I don't like to go into politics to run someone down or not, but this one I'm particularly concerned about, this particular leader, for a number of reasons. And that, so, I mean, I think that, and you have to do this, I do sincerely believe that I am the best candidate. And I think that by a long shot, I'm sorry, I am more successful than Donald Trump in business, much more. That's the truth. I've not been bankrupting companies, and I didn't get my dad give me $1 billion, and so I don't have all this, this stuff that he had, and he. So having said that, I think that I can look this man in the eye. I know his games and his tricks. For example, I would have, if it was me and I was in charge right now, I would have flown down to meet the lady that's in charge of Mexico, present there, and said, look, we're going to go to war. So don't, everybody's worried. We got this 30-day, we should not have done this. We should just said, bring it on. You're going to destroy our economy. We're going to destroy yours. It'll take about 2 weeks. The stock markets are all going to crash. All your supporters are going to start hitting you on the head. Things will gridlock. Your factories won't work. Because let's say you're making this high-tech phone, and there's one little pin that comes from Canada. You don't have it. Everything grinds to a halt. So all the car manufacturers were so integrated that I would have called his bluff. I think we would have had pain for a couple of weeks, maybe 1 or 2, and then it'd be over. Now what he's done is what classic bullies do. And this, I call this, once you use your power, you've consumed it. Once you've used power, you consume it. So, Phil, you better do this, I'm gonna punch you. So, okay, give me your money, and then tomorrow you better do this, punch you. Finally, when I punch you, go, okay, you know what, you punched me, it's over. I don't care now. So, I think we should have called his bluff. I think now we're just like, 30 days from now, you don't think he's gonna demand something more, demand something extra. So I don't think we handle it the right way. I'm not afraid of a little bit of pain, and we could have gotten over it and be done with this guy, called his bluff. That's what I would have done.
Yeah.
But it is what it is, and if I get in there, I will look at doing something along those lines.
So let's talk about the tariffs. You had a medical device company, right? What would it have meant operationally for you to have tariffs, 25%, let's say, imposed on your company?
So generally speaking, medical devices are one of the last things they tariff, because people need these things really, and that. So whenever you put tariffs on, you're hurting everybody. You're hurting your own economy. You're hurting it. You're going to destroy all economies. For us particularly, we've done an analysis to see, okay, some stuff we sell at a huge markup. So it costs like $1, we sell it for like, I want to say we cost $1, we sell it for $10. So if it's $1.25, so we're looking at this country of origins, where it comes from. Some stuff we have partially made in Korea, brought here, transformed over. Saying it's not tackling Korea, so we're going to say that we don't have Canadian.
So there's
content.
workarounds.
Yeah, there's workarounds, but the reality is, this is a huge undertaking. All of a sudden, to put all this bureaucracy and charge it on everybody. So if he was to have done this, 25% Canada and Mexico overnight, they don't have enough people to collect the money. They don't have anybody to fill the forms out.
Who's going to enforce it?
Who's going to do it? And so all of a sudden, all 3 economies would gridlock. The stock market, it dropped, it bounced back up, but it would drop and drop and drop. All his supporters would say, "You're killing my business, you jerk." You know what I mean? Stop this. Not that I care about that. And so we should have just had this pain for 2 weeks and be done with it. And then I think that would have been a better way to handle it. I would not have given him anything, but you have to do coordination. You couldn't do it alone. So because he's such a blowhard, and he said he's going to take us and Mexico and China, I would have even called up China and said, let's do it. Let's crush this guy, and then we're all done with him, you know.
Mm-hmm. So retaliatory tariffs, what does that look like? What does that mean? Because this word has been thrown around a lot. I don't know that everyone really understands what it means to put tariffs on things.
Yeah. So whenever you put a tariff, like let's say they're gonna, like normally one steel. So let's say you got a steel rod. They use steel rods to build cars, everything. So say the steel rod costs $100, and we're selling steel rods, and all of a sudden it costs $125, and they have overcapacity. So then they go, I'm not going to buy your steel rod for $100 because I can buy this one for $100. But the guy selling for $100 goes, hang on a second. I ain't selling it for 100. I know that my compare is 125, so I might sell it for you 120. And not only that, but I know they're locked out of the market. So the guy that I was actually selling to for $100, his price is going up too. So whenever you put tariffs on, you hurt your economy as much as the other ones.
Yeah, you're talking about domestically prices would increase just
Because people aren't silly. I mean, we're going to take advantage. We're business people. We're going to say, okay, like lumber, softwood lumber, they always tariff. But they need lumber to build all homes. They need steel to build all these skyscrapers, major cost infrastructure. You put tariffs on them, prices go up for everybody. So he's going to have inflation. If he did this, we'd all be hit with massive inflation. It would be very crushing for all of us, but him as much as us. So we try, as he's punching us, he's punching himself too.
yeah.
And he's going to have more people mad at him in his own country. And so, like I said, I was never. I think we just had to deal with it, and I would have dealt with it once and be done with this guy in that sense.
What do you think about the provinces kind of rallying behind a retaliation? You know, like I don't know that Trump knew that he was uniting Canadians when he like said we're like a 51st state or something, or you know, were you surprised to see everyone, you know, come together? I mean, Alberta sort of not really, but more or less.
I think it's great. I think it's really great that the country's rallied behind. We're a great country. We're a sovereign country. We're not joining the Americans at all. But I want you to think about something, okay? Because I've dealt with this. I've done hundreds of negotiations with Americans. I can't tell you how many. I don't know contracts and all this. But I want you to think about something. He says his first thing. He says the border's too weak. Got these criminals coming, illegals and drugs and all. You got to strengthen your border. Why does he do this? Because his number one way he got elected was promising to fix illegal immigration. That's the number one thing that got him elected. Nobody thought Canada's a problem. You know why? Because we're not. We don't know. Americans didn't think it was a problem. So he's trying to, what I call bait and switch. He's trying to create big problem with Americans. Big problem with Canada. No. And if he just said, I solved the problem with Canada, people go, well, what was the problem solved? So look at what he says. I have this big problem with Canada. All these illegals, all this drug coming over. And Trudeau flies down and says, okay, I'll fix everything. Trump goes, okay, you just wrecked my story. That's what Trudeau did by flying down. Two mistakes. You don't give anything to a bully negotiator. It's zero, nothing. That's a mistake one, but you don't go down there and say, I'll fix it. So what does he do? The next tweet after he says the border's too soft, it's got to be much harder. His next tweet is, let's get rid of the border. Come on, 51st state. Well, hang on, dude. Like, one minute you want a stronger border, and now suddenly you want no border. Like, it makes no sense. Because all he wants to do is stay in the news and cause trouble with us so that he can say he fixed something. That's all he's after. If you take a step back and think about it, what if he was to say to American people, I'm getting rid of the border with Mexico? His own people would kill him, right? So it shows you that Americans, like Canadians, they don't see us as a threat. We are not a threat. We work with them together. And he's just trying to create a problem so he can go then and say, I solved it. And then he says, I'll give you 30 days respite. 30 days. So he can come back and say, now you got to give me something else. And then 30 days again. So we did not solve the problem by calling him. If I get in there, we're going to call his bluff. And worst case for a couple of weeks, you know. But we got through COVID. We'll get through this. You know what I mean? It's not going to be easy for a couple of weeks, but he will be destroying his own economy. We just need to look at that and understand that. Once you know that, we know that together with Mexico and maybe China and other ones, we can get through this.
So this hasn't been part of your campaign at all, but those who know you have a very large black family, right? Have you been sort of strategic about sort of when you highlight that and when you don't, or have you just kind of been, hey, this is who I am, but I'm not campaigning on a social justice lens, or I'm not campaigning as a black person, I'm campaigning as someone who's going to fix things? Like, was that a conscious?
It's a good question. Yeah, because like I used to have a nice afro.
It used to be more hot.
Yeah, like changes. And I live in this cold climate. I don't like it. But no, my mom is from Barbados and my dad's Ming, so I'm mixed race in that. And I've done a lot of work for social justice, for fighting Islamophobia, anti-Semitism. When I was elected, myself with Greg Fergus, Selena Chavez, and Amanda DeVore would form the first Black Caucus. And we, this investments, like Jason was talking about, $100 million going into BDC for Black entrepreneurs. This is what we pushed for. It took a long time, but all this money, and our argument was, we pay taxes just like everybody else. Now you start investing in us, just like it's been done to every other community. And now we're going to do wealth creation. And look at all of these great entrepreneurs that are here, right? All these great ideas. So really to get the investments going back in there. And I'm happy to see that it's now working. When I launched the campaign, I did a group, Candid, and they have created and supported so many businesses that they're up to like 7,000 employees up in jobs being created. They've got over 420 million in revenue generated. So this is working. And so I'm a huge believer in investing in ourselves, in our different communities. And we don't need to go give $10 billion to some battery car company to come here. We can just develop everything ourselves. I want to see Canada investing in ourselves, putting money back in ourselves. I believe in us. I believe in our capabilities. Now, with respect to my ethnicity, I'm not playing that card per se, but it is who I am. I mean, I'm basically raised in raised in a Caribbean family. That's, the food I eat, the family, that's my world, if you will. That's where I'm at home. And I think it'll come out over time. Like, I haven't been getting a lot of press because they kind of don't see me, but that's normal. But I hope in the next few weeks, people get to know more what I've done, what I've accomplished business-wise, where I've done for social justice, all those things. So yeah, I think it's going to come out. My staff actually did a couple of pictures I'll show it to you, like a young me and a young Obama. And
That's funny.
Yeah, I'll show you a couple of them. They're gonna put that out.
Oh, yeah.
There you go. Okay. And it's funny because when Obama first got elected, every day I would wear a blue suit. I walk in a restaurant, people like for a second. Yeah. At the very beginning, So they didn't get to see him a bit, but yeah, I'll show you some of the photos. Put them out. Yeah.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
I'd love to see that. Listen, I mean, I want to open it up to the floor and see if there's any questions. But I appreciate this candid conversation, and I'm excited to see what happens in the next 5-6 weeks.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something too. I do a lot of these talks, but I get a lot out of doing these talks too, because I'm always learning from all these young entrepreneurs, new ideas. I find it very impressive, and I would just want to congratulate all of you for what you're doing. I really mean that sincerely, and really encourage you, because think of my mom. She was a young colored lady like 40 years ago, and when I tell her story, a lot of times I was getting people go like, hey, your dad helped her. Didn't your dad help her? And I thought, first time, so why you ask that question? And I realized that there's a kind of a small undercurrent against, could a woman have done this? And I said, yeah, when my mom said, stuff this envelope or put stamps on this, my dad helped, you know what I mean? But my dad was no entrepreneur, zero, no skills at that at all, right? He was not that guy. But so I just want to get her story out there, because her story is a wonderful example of a young ethnic person being supremely successful. And I tell you that her values are still the values to run the company on. And it was her vision that I came in, it was 0 to 1 though. I didn't start at 0. I took what she had put in place, and with my partner, we ran and made it bigger and bigger. But so when I see all of you here and I hear these ideas, I want you to know that story, and I want to encourage all of you to really go full on.
Yeah. We'll do more over time, so 5-10 minutes questions and.
I sell a SaaS product that generates corporate training for large companies. And I want to know if there's tariffs on tech. I don't think there is.
On the digital assets.
See, that's a learnful question, number one. I don't know the answer, but the question is itself needs to be figured out. So when he says I'm going to put tariffs on everything overnight, they don't even have the structure.
Right.
They can't even figure out which country of origin was taxed. Like,
Right.
do you know what I mean? Like, they can't. All you need to do, theoretically, is if you just open a box office in.
But I already have a Delaware.
Yeah.
And they say-
I'm good.
Yeah, they say
there,
that's where.
But maybe I just sell from there.
Yeah, that's it.
That's
So it's very easy to say I'll put 25% on everything. It's nonsensical. That's why I was saying I would call it bluff, but I don't have a specific answer. But they
My understanding is no, though.
Ah,
From our portfolio, our understanding is no, digital assets are not we're not in Xterra.
I'll say.
Yeah.
I think he.
Oh, yep. Right.
Yes, so when we first started, I first had the raw idea for what we're doing in fall of 2023 and rejected from every single accelerator incubator here, but selected in Silicon Valley. And I wanted to, and then we came back here and now we're part of two, and with one in Montreal. What are the gaps and maybe on a systemic kind of approach is missing here that would make basically the contrast between here, the ecosystem here, and in Silicon Valley, and how can we bridge the gap maybe on a systemic level?
Yeah, I think that the reality is this, whether we like it or not, Americans are far more risk takers. They're far more willing to stand up. When I was selling new products, when I came with a new product, the number one place I would go to sell in the States was Texas, number two, California, because they're kind of like open-minded. And the number one place in Canada actually was Quebec, because they're more open-minded here. And I hate to say it, but they call it Lodestar State, the independent state in Texas, in Quebec, the independent movement mindset. Yeah. So it exists. I don't think you can change that. So like I could bang my head against the wall trying to sell my first product in Ontario. It's not going to happen because they're going to say, well, what are the Americans buying or what's this? Whereas in Texas, they don't care, or Silicon Valley, they don't care. And here in Quebec, they're more open-minded too. So I think you just need to be aware of it. I don't think you could change it, but just know what you're dealing with. So it sounds to me like you did a smart move. You went someplace that they were more open-minded to your ideas. That's the way to do it. You know, I think that's a good move, and good luck with it. Yeah.
I don't know who to hand up first. No. Okay. Justin, keep you trying for me again.
So my question is about the Bank of Canada announcing that we're facing this productivity crisis in Canada. So for every, we put 60% more efforts in our inputs for the same output as our neighbors south of the border. And that's on a systemic level across the country. Do you have any thoughts on policies that may be implemented to help stimulate the economy and help to resolve this systemic productivity crisis in Canada?
Absolutely. And so productivity is like, if we take, like in an hour, we make 60 of this, they make 100. So they're far more productive. So if we can make 100, we're going to make more money than that. My first thing is about government itself. So we are so unproductive. So what happens is that politicians get elected and they go, businesses, you're not productive, you got to get better, just lecturing them. I'm saying, okay, why don't we fix the government ourselves? I have full control of the government if I'm elected. Why don't I make the government more productive? The number one place that they have problems with is Revenue Canada. The people calling Revenue Canada are not the guys, hey, I want to know how do I cheat my taxes. They're trying to say, how do I do it right? And we make it so hard to deal with. The good example of productivity, people couldn't get a passport because it's all outdated ways, all this stuff. So my vision was, let's make the government more productive. Let's lead by example. And also, if I give every business 3% more of their time, that's 3% more productive they can make. So they might go from making 60 to 63, 64 of these things. So I really want to lead by example. Personally, in my own business, we were always very keen on productivity. So any machine we could buy, we told our staff, don't worry, this is not taking the job, this is protecting the job. Because the more productive we are, the more we get done, the more we need to make money, pay your salaries. So I personally have invested tremendously in equipment, any way to be building our productivity in my own businesses. Having said that, I want to go do that in the government too.
And then Doris.
Yeah. Thank you. I have a question about your Candid platform. You mentioned your priorities earlier. I'm curious if you can go a little deeper on how where your stance is in relation to the other liberal politicians, or where if any different you would take the Liberal Party platform, and if there's any overlap or areas where you may be closer or share ideas with some of the other party couple like the Conservative platform.
So if you talk to anybody, they all know the economy's bad, so they're all going to say, I'll fix it, Bond. I'm going to say it, we're all going to say it first. And I just think that where I come from is my industrial background, building businesses, helping companies. So I know what it's like to be a 2-person operation. But I also know what it's like if you're running a company of 10 people. And I know what it's like if you're running a company of 50. And every time you change these steps, you have to change. If you're running a company of 50, it's not the same way if you run a company of 500. If 500, changing them into 1,000. So because of my lived experiences, I've lived all these different stages. So I know what's going to help these businesses be productive. I know how the government can help it or how the government hurts them at times. Others have read a book on it or they studied it, but they haven't lived it. So the difference between me and the rest is I'm bringing my lived experiences when it comes to the economy. When it comes to healthcare, I don't think anybody's talking about healthcare. I have a vision that I see how to do that. And when it comes about modernizing government, I don't hear the talk about those two things. So those two, I would say, I'm the only one talking about those two.
But I guess how is that for policy? Like, is it differences in taxation? Is it differences in labor rules? Like, what are the actual mechanisms of policy that would differ between your platform and someone else like Christopher Fraley, who's more of an economist? So, like, that's what I'm trying to understand from a policy perspective. How does that affect how I live and do business? Not just the outcomes, but the actual mechanisms that you.
So, let's take healthcare for example, right? Our healthcare system is grinding slowly to a halt. It's just been overwhelmed. So I'm going to make a policy changes like I'm going to use what's called nurse practitioners. And there's nurses and then there's doctors, and nurse practitioners can do not everything a doctor can do, but a lot more. So right now there's only 2 ways to get in the system. You got a family doctor or you go to emergency. And guess what? Emergency is always clogged up because we're using emergency, you don't need to. I want to open 2 more doors. So there's 4 ways to go into the system. If you have a doctor's rate, if you have an emergency, go to the hospital. But if you have a chronic issue or whatever, we have continuous care centers, which are going to be staffed by nurse practitioners. And then we have all these pharmacies, and they're all trained to dispense, but also to diagnose. So there's a lot more, and different provinces have given them different, what they call scope of practice. So I'm going to say we got to open up these 2 extra doors. That's a real policy decision to say there's more ways and it's not going to cost more. It's just going to change the way it's done. So if we train 6,000 nurse practitioners, it'll take about 5-6 years, and each one does 1,000 patients. That's 6 million people that don't have a doctor right now covered. And it costs us less than a doctor. I'm going to use artificial intelligence to support their diagnosis. And you have 450,000 neurons of Canada. So training them 6,000 of them that put their hand up and want to be higher trained to get paid better, that will find them. And these are the kind of investments. That's a real policy decision if I get into the nitty gritty on them. But I'm in a nitty gritty on all these ones. But when we talk in general overview is that I'm going to change the system fundamentally. And I'm going to use Canadian technology too, because I see the Canadian AI in health goods amazing. I won't go too much in details there, but we don't need to go buy anything from anybody else. We're going to take our companies, like one of these, just one's working on the AI, and I know this one's doing this. Okay, you know what? We're going to bet on you, and we're going to buy your products here. We're going to buy Canadian. We're going to put it to work, and we're going to be the envy of the world.
Just to tag along on that, considering healthcare is a provincial, under provincial legislation, I'm curious to know how.
So I'm not going to come block forward with it. So maybe years. It's the biggest spend that they have, over 50% of every province, and it's going like this. It's crowding out everything. So they're all looking for solutions. The difference between all of them and me, I've spent 35 plus years in healthcare, dealing with hospitals, doctors, policymakers, government agencies. So I've seen the system. I have experts helping me, and I don't need to do another study. And now I'm not going to come in there and say we're going to ram this through. The beauty of our system is we have 10 provinces, 3 territories. So we'll test this out in one province. And the federal government pay for it. If you don't want to do it, okay, you won't do it. But guess what? They're all looking for a solution. So if this works here, all we're gonna say is just share with the other provinces. So I know that there's gonna be a challenger, but the fact that we have what they call the Canada Health Act, it's the federal government that laid out the rules. Okay, that's why we have universal health care. It's the federal government. So we say provincially, yeah, the federal government laid out the rules, and federal government also pays a lot of money. So we have two things that we do have sit at any table. I know careers say stay out of it, especially in Quebec, but no, we're going to be partners with.
Do I have?
Yeah, sorry, I have so many questions, but I think I'll just keep one, which is actually you're running in your old riding, right?
I'm not running yet because I don't have a writing or something like there. But I will, if I win, then I'll decide where I run. But right now I'm not even thinking about that. If I win, then that.
It's about the leaders. Okay. So assuming that you do run, and I know you're in it to win it, but there are also other candidates. If you are not the winning candidate, what for the leadership of the Liberal Party of Canada, what would be your preferred portfolio if you were to be in the cabinet? What would be your top choice?
Okay, first of all, I plan to win, but if I don't win, there's a chance I don't win. I don't know if the new leader will want me. I don't know that. I don't know if they'll say we need your skills or not. So that's one. But I will say this, I've been a Liberal for 48 years. 4 of those 48 I was an MP, but I've done all kinds of work before and after that I helped with campaigning. I've been in charge of fundraising. I've been financial. So I've done a lot for the Liberal Party, and I will continue to do that. Whether I run or not, that's not the only way you could contribute, if I could say it that way. And I'll always be contributing. But I can't speak for another leader, so I don't know what they decide or not.
Yes, my question is, well, first of all, my father he runs a tech firm for the last 20 years, and I've been observing the work that he has been doing. And my question is more for him as well and other founders that are starting small in industries that are, let's say, highly complex. So I'm thinking about Baylis and, in the med sector, I'm sure the barriers are very, very high. So for you and your mom, how were you able to navigate in an industry with that many barriers, and especially I would say a small fish among much bigger fishes? So
yes, that's a great. So there's a lot of barriers to healthcare because let's say this thing you invent a new phone, it's pretty simple to get out and sell it. Healthcare, you invent a new something, you can't just go sell it. You have to get very special approvals. So that's a big barrier. Health Canada, and then it go to United States Food and Drug Administration. So we have what we call regulatory barriers. We have also very strict ways how we manufacture stuff. So we have to be under what they call ISO certification. So our plants have to be certified a certain way. Products have to be approved. The company has to be approved. We have a lot of patents that we patent things. So our business is very high barrier business. That's both good and bad. So it's hard to get in. But if you get past those barriers, then other people have a hard time coming through those barriers too. I think like any business, depending what you get into, face up to it. And the challenges of barriers are good. If you in a business where there's no barriers, what happens then is this, if you can't differentiate yourself, there's no pricing spec, right? So what I mean by that is, like if we look at Uber drivers, never going to make $1 million a year. It's never going to happen because if Uber drivers are making $1 million a year, there's a lot of other people say, well, I'm going to become an Uber driver. And that because there's no barrier to if anybody who with a car just become an Uber driver. If you see, hey, Frank's making all this money at medical products, says, yeah, come, but I got my patents, I got this, I got that, I got all these barriers. You can't just, I can tell you what I'm doing. I don't have to hide it. But you say, okay, how do I get in? It'll take you years to get through those barriers. But when we started slow. We started distributing. So we got through barriers like our company had to be approved as a distributor. First step. Then you have to be higher when you're going to be a manufacturer. But we already knew the process of it. So we didn't just start. You had this, even though we were distributors, we still had to have the product approved. So we knew how to do that. So we worked our way through the barriers. But you're absolutely right. Ours is a number of high barriers. But with high barriers, you charge a lot more. Much higher margins. Higher the barriers, higher the margins.
Was there a big difference between like from level 0 to 1 with your mother to 1 to 100 to navigate this variance?
Yeah, so 1 to 100 is what everybody has to learn is that as you grow, what got you from here, 1 to say 10, not getting not going to happen. So I see a lot of businesses, they're like one guy, super smart person, they grow 10, 17, at the 7, 8, 9, 10, 50, 8, fall down because he can't delegate. And then the company falls apart, he starts again, really smart guy, but can't delegate. So I see a lot of companies go like this, or they get to 50 and they just can't break through because the person doesn't know, okay, before I made all the decisions. If you try and make all the decisions now at 50, it's not going to happen. If you don't have an HR department when you got 100, you're going to have all kinds of problems. When you're 10 people, you don't need an HR department. How's everybody? You're right here. But so learning to change and grow, that's challenging even for myself and my partner. We had to change the way we operate because we can't run 1,000 people the way we ran 10. 10, hey, everybody get the room, we're going to do this. 1,000 doesn't work that way. So that understanding that you yourself have to change it. Whatever was really good that got you from here to here, it's not going to get you from there to there.
Last question.
Last question. All right, just re-tariffs, because I know you mentioned that if you were in power, you've called the bluff, and it would have been maybe like a downturn for 2 weeks, something really hard, and then things would get back on track. And you mentioned COVID as well. Would you see the government's responsibility in that case to kind of bail out maybe businesses by providing funding or subsidies in the way that they did during COVID? Or would this be something where maybe businesses would have to take the brunt and then it'd be over?
I think that we have to share it as a country because we don't want to lose our businesses in that. So the point I'm making is that we can't be blackmailed continuously. So there's going to be a hit because he's told us he's coming back in 30 days. So what I was saying is let's take the hit. I would support our companies that again, some are going to get really hit hard, some are not going to get hit hard. Like Chelsea's saying, it's not going to hurt her business per se because it's all internal. But other ones that are crossing the border, they're going to get hit. We have to support. Last thing we want to do is put them out of business. So yes, I would absolutely support them through this process. And we're going to be losing. It's a waste of our money, but they're going to have the same problem as this. Wasted their same problem everywhere. So it's not just us getting hurt. He's going to hurt his economy, and he's picking a fight with everybody. So that's in our way. We're not picking a fight with China. We're not picking a fight with Mexico. So let him pick a fight with everybody. He's the one that's going to be hurt. It's going to be coming out in 3 ways. So I would have taken advantage of this bastard approach. You say he wants to pick a fight with all three? Okay, all three are going to beat you up.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for being here. Thanks for watching Rep Matters. Keep the conversation going by liking, commenting, and especially sharing our videos with your community. Stay updated by following us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter, and subscribing to our YouTube channel. See you next time.